interpreter of history, what happened many, many years ago is exactly what we're trying to do today. Silence. Can you hear me in the back? Okay. Let's take your seats, please, and let's proceed. Thank you.
Hello, how are you today? I'm going to speak on the difference between the English common law and the Spanish civil law. And I'm glad that Mr. Patterson was here because I was asking him several questions on what he was saying about our language. And I don't agree with everything he said because the laws are very, very different. Our land grants, the majority of our land grants were given under Spanish law. And then, of course, Mexico is still under Spanish civil law. Now, when this became a republic in 1836, that's when they applied, well, for 4 years they used Spanish civil law. And then in 1840, they decided that they were going to change it to English common law. And the reason they did that, they had the reason. Under Spanish law, every land grant, there are some they were giving as an extended, and some were actually purchased. I know that San Juan de Parisitas was purchased, I know that San Salvador del Tule was purchased, and other large land grants were purchased. So when you purchase a land grant, you are given the title to it completely. The Spanish government vests sovereignty to those land grants. So those land grants have vested rights attached to them. And one of the most important vested rights is inheritance rights. The inheritance rights under Spanish law are very different than inheritance rights under English common law. Under Spanish law, an inheritance right is the right in property. It's the right to own that property from the original descendant to all his successors in line. And under these land grants, for example, on the Cavazos land grant, in Narciso's Last Will and Testament, he specifically detailed that. His land grant was going to be divided, so this person had this much, this person this much, and then in succession. So it was meant for it to stay within the family. There is a law in Reynosa in 1789, and I have a copy of it with me here, where the king specifically passed this law, where it made it mandatory that any land grant, I said, every land grant was supposed to stay within the family that owned it. And it could not be sold out of that area. It had to be issued from, I will, from descendant to descendant to descendant. That would be your father, your grandfather, and so on and so on. So that in itself should have been a perpetual land grant, as it is worded in some of those titles. When Texas became a republic, there's certain laws. They kept so many of them. The homestead law is one of them that they kept. But under Spanish law, a homestead is the area where you have your home, you have your horse, and that is the means of that family's survival. Under Spanish law, a land grant is not taxed. You cannot tax a land grant under Spanish or Mexican law because that is something that is, you can tax only the product of the soil, but you can never tax a land grant because you cannot issue it out to anybody. That is your survival, and that's the way a person or a family was known. You are worth what your land is worth. So under English common law, when in 1840, that's one of the first things they did. They ended the perpetuity law, the perpetuity to a land grant. That's one of them they got rid of. They kept the homestead law, but only to a certain amount of acreage. A homestead is the whole area of your land grant, whether it be 10 acres or whether it be 1,000,000 acres. That was still your homestead. So they also, the laws of inheritance are very, very different. So they kept for example, the Three Marine League, and this is what I, just don't understand. The Three Marine League is an area off the coast. Now, under Spanish law, you can claim up to about 10.5 miles out towards the ocean. Under English law, it's only three miles. So the state of Texas itself took this to the Supreme Court of the United States, and they told them you cannot claim those 12 miles because when you were annexed by us, you came under the same footing as any other American state in the Union. But then, a lot of times I think it was Eisenhower, and Texas continued with this issue, so they took it before the Congress of the United States. And sure enough, by congressional vote, Texas, since the 1960s, I believe, is now the owner of the Marine League, which is 10 to 12 miles offshore. That's why they have all these monies for education and all this really in that area. So see, in my opinion, under Spanish law, any land grant that is by the coast, for example, the Cavazos, the Banis, and a lot of land grants, are the owner of the mean high or high tide, which is the area where the tide goes in and out. All that land that is uncovered and then covered again with ocean or with bay water, that should be attached to the land grant. And that's what the Kennedy Foundation sued the law. I should have asked Mr. Patterson about that. He was the land grant commissioner then. I believe they won that issue. They settled for millions of dollars.
Do you have a camera?
Now, when they issued these land patents, when they were adjudicated, they adjudicated these land patents under English common law. So it says very clearly that the state was in the belief that they were the owner of the property to where the water and the land meet. And that's why they were contesting the Kennedy Foundation.
And we can move forward.
And so that tells me that land grant was issued under Texas common law.
So you might.
But I would have asked you, what are our rights to all this land on the coast? And I claimed it as an heir, because under Spanish law, I would be the original owner of all that property. And it should be, as a land patent, I do not believe the Kennedy Foundation should have settled for anything because they were given a land patent. They don't have the original title. An original title should be the only legal document to a land grant. A land patent is something like a quitclaim. And I have a lawsuit where in the state of California, the Dominguez family brought this before in court, and this was only in the 1950s, I believe. And they were fighting for the mineral under their land. And the state, this company wanted to drill. So I said, you can't drill because those minerals belong to me. But you gave me that land patent, you gave it to me with the mineral included. So he went to a state court, and sure enough, it was decided by that court that when the Treaty of Guadalupe was signed in 1848, and this is Blue versus McKay, the United States was only like a holder, a trustee of those land grants. But when they adjudicated those land grants, the United States, it was like a quitclaim, had no right to the mineral of that land grant. So this family was issued the land above and the land below. Now, that's why my question to Gary Patterson was, why did the state of Texas claim the mineral from 1840 to 1866? They had no right to do that. Because to date, under Spanish law, the mineral is attached to the land grant, no matter what they say. It does not all belong to the owner of the property, but they pay the tax on that gold.
Dr. Leonard?
To this day, you cannot drill in a private property owned in Spain unless you get the consent of the owner of that land. And that's the way it has been all the time, and we use that under Spanish law. I've been repeating that over and over, and they say, no. I say, yes, because to this day, that's the way it is. You cannot drill on anybody's or pull any kind of metal or any kind of mineral without the consent of the owner of the land grantee. So because the mineral estate is a dominant estate. In the state of Texas, it's a dominant estate. In Mexico and in Spain, it is the dominant estate. So how can you have a dominant, a topsoil would be only like a usage. A land patent, when the state gave us a land patent, they only gave us the permission to use our land because they taxed it. So in 1866, they passed this law in 1876, that they issued us, this land was for, they gave us the land, the mineral. But at the same time, it was going to be taxed the same as any other property under common law. So it was just like, okay, I'm giving you a land patent, but you can only use it. But you can lose it. You can lose that property if you fail to pay the taxes. I can foreclose on your property. I can do whatever I want to because you did not, you lost it for whatever reason. So, but this is private property that should not have been taxed, that should not have been lost, unless the owners in agreements, when you have a land grant, it's owned by inheritance by every member of the family. When you sell a part of that land grant, everyone has to agree to that sale. That is in Mexico to this day. It is very difficult to sell any land grant property because everybody, okay, if everybody's in agreement, sure you can do it. But you can sell a piece of that land, and what stays intact? What do you? The mineral stays intact. I can sell this area, and the mineral stays intact. Remember that it's always a dominant estate. Now, when everybody agrees to sell the whole land grant, then you sell everything with it. But as long as you hold on to some of it, we should be the owners of, because I still live on the land grant. I mean, I should be the owner of all the land grant.
It's the same branch.
Did you have a question?
66,000.
And agreed, yeah. But you know that didn't happen like that in Texas. It didn't happen like that. Because all they had to do was go find a relative with the same last name, you sign a paper here, and you're presented before a judge or a court, now that's mine. And actually, that's how they got a lot of their land. Even though they bought it from different owners at the same time. You know, I mean, they were not their rightful owners. So that is one thing that I was asking him. How can, where does your sovereignty start and where do we lose our sovereignty under our vested rights? Our vested rights have been protected under international law, treaties.
We're down to 30 minutes.
Our rights should have never been lost.
Okay.
Because they were protected by the Yolanda Treaty, whether the United States or whether Texas states it or not. Because we never lose our vested rights. And that's one thing that I don't believe
You look fine.
the Republic of Texas had any sovereignty in this area. They were in war with Mexico, never agreed to their taking over this area. They never recognized the Republic as a sovereignty. So, okay, France did it, England did it, maybe in the United States, but all those countries were at war with Mexico as well. So I don't believe that was even, should have been legal whatsoever. And Santana actually signed the treaty he was a prisoner of war. To me, that's not a point right there. He was forced to do something like that. And everybody knows, I mean, we all know that the border here in that republic was up to the Nueces River. The only reason they claimed down to the Rio Grande was when they were annexed by Texas, and they included that boundary in their annexation, but under condition. It was under a condition that if you got a problem with your neighbor, then it's conditional. So it actually wasn't legal and recognized until the Guadalupe Hidalgo Treaty was signed. And under that treaty, we are protected. And we should have been protected all this time. The only thing is that the United States government, the Supreme Court, in 1855, I believe, gave the state of Texas recognition as a sovereign. But, you know, that's the difference between common law and civil law. Civil law is very to the point, either you're right or you're wrong. It's codified prescriptive law. Common law is very broad. It's got too many opinions. And once you file a lawsuit and you say you have this lawsuit and you won this lawsuit, and that's a law, it's set forever, and then you have another law here. So the laws on the land rights are all different. Some are for the heirs and some are against the heirs. All they have to do is, well, under this law, it makes it legal for me to do this. But under this law, it's illegal to do this. Like in wood that made, it's legal for me as an heir to get my mineral. But under something else, under Cox, and I have it here, some lawsuit here in Texas, Robinson, I think it is. Okay, the state of Texas during lawsuit accepted, yes, we have the rights protected in this state until 1848. That's, you know, but then you have other lawsuits here in Texas that say, no, you lost them in 1840. Like the Kennedy Pasture Company, the Texas the Kennedy Foundation. So see, there's different laws that protect different entities. And I believe it's all political in this state. It's politics. If you've got the money and you've got the know-how and you've got your friends in the Texas Supreme Court, then of course you're going to win that. If not, you're going to lose it. So it's all political. But in reality, that's our question. How do we overcome this? Because how do we claim those vested sovereign rights? Do we have to go to a federal court? Do we have to go to an international court? We have to come to a conclusion. Because as it is right now, they can always claim sovereignty against us. There's always a sovereignty law. And sovereignty, they got an immunity because they're a state. As a sovereignty, you have immunity from so many things. But that sovereignty, in my point, should be extracted from our land rights. Because we've got the sovereignty, the original sovereignty of the land grant. The land grant in itself should be a sovereignty because it was issued by a king, a different sovereign, like compared to an Indian reservation. An Indian reservation is protected under sovereignty because they have certain vested rights. And there is I believe I have one of the lawsuits here, where they use that in I think it was the 1850s, where one of these Indian reservations actually took this to court, and they were protected under the Guadalupe Hidalgo Treaty. Their sovereign rights were protected under the Guadalupe Hidalgo Treaty because that treaty mandated that those people, those private natives, should be taken care of under that treaty. If they gave them a land grant, to this day, the Tiwas, the Kickapoo, I mean, they're sovereign nations because they're protected under the Guadalupe Hidalgo Treaty. So my question is, what is the difference between a tribal land grant and a Spanish land grant? It was given, they were given by the same king, same Spanish laws. So why don't we have the same vested rights included? So when it comes to our land grants in Texas or ports or it is very, very difficult because they throw all this laws at you. If there would only be one law that, or some form of, that where we can, so where we can actually get our message right. And Nick is going to talk more or less of what I would like to talk about a little more, and then it would be about the sovereignty of the state, the sovereignty of the Texas has, and the law, the sovereignty that the U.S. has. It is very, very different, and I'm sure he's going to go into that in detail. Thank you very much.